Today we're stepping into the world of Assassin's Creed Shadows and its protagonist Yasuke, a figure who sparked plenty of debate. He's an African man cast as a samurai in feudal Japan, a choice that's raised eyebrows and ignited conversations. As someone who values stories that honor history and human purpose, I'll admit I see the shadow of modern ideologies like DEI and critical theory looming over this. But I decided to dig deeper. Why does Yasuke feel like a forced fit, and could he still work despite that? Welcome to Alex Gray's show. Make sure to subscribe and share for more quality and informative content like this in the future. And now let's dive straight into it. Stories have a way of revealing what matters most. Think of classics like the Iliad, where Achilles stands at the heart of Greek warrior culture, or Beowulf, rooted in the struggles of a king and his people. Traditionally, narratives orbit the central, the heroes, the leaders, the core of a society. That focus feels natural, reflecting a world where order and purpose drive the plot. But Yasuke is an outsider, a black foreigner in 16th century Japan, a homogeneous land of samurai and shoguns. His starring role feels less like a nod to history and more like a modern twist, one that flips the script by putting the fringe front and center. That twist has roots in critical theory, a philosophy from thinkers like Max Horkheimer and Theodor Adorno of the Frankfurt School. They saw culture as a battlefield. Horkheimer wrote, "The revolution won't rest until traditional authority is uprooted." Adorno added, "Critique must expose the dominant culture's flaws and amplify the silenced." For them, elevating minorities, women, homosexuality, or outsiders isn't just storytelling, it's a tool to dismantle power, to tear down what they call patriarchy, and to pave the way for a new utopian age. Yasuke, in this light, isn't just a character, he's a statement, a DEI-driven choice to challenge Japan's historical hierarchy with a figure who doesn't quite fit. Yasuke, the African samurai who served Oda Nobunaga in 16th century Japan, occupies a curious space in history. His existence is documented yet sparse, mentioned briefly in chronicles like the Shincho Koki and Jesuit records. A man of most likely Mozambican origin brought to Japan by Portuguese traders. He rose from an outsider to a warrior in Nobunaga's retinue. He was his carrier of his sword, and it was a position of honor. However, historically, he is a footnote, a fascinating anomaly in a rigidly stratified feudal society. But in modern retellings, whether in Netflix Yasuke anime or Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Shadows, he's transformed into a symbol, a battering ram against the homogeneity of Japan's past. This isn't mere creative license, it's a deliberate invocation of critical theory's playbook, where the marginalized are weaponized to upend the status quo. The Frankfurt School's influence stretches far beyond its mid-20th century origins. Horkheimer and Adorno, riding in the shadow of fascism and capitalism's excesses, argued that culture wasn't neutral, it was a mechanism of control. In their seminal work Dialectic of Enlightenment, they critiqued how mass culture perpetuated obedience to hierarchical power. To counter this, they advocated a relentless questioning of norms, a lifting of voices from the periphery to fracture the center. Yasuke's elevation fits this mold perfectly. By placing a black man at the heart of a samurai narrative, creators aren't just diversifying a cast, they're staging a cultural coup, challenging the mythos of a pure insular Japan, untouched by the global currents of race and empire. This approach hinges on a reinterpretation of history through a modern lens, often branded as diversity, equity, and inclusion. Critics might argue it's anachronistic. Japan's Sengoku period had no concept of DEI, and Yasuke's role, while remarkable, wasn't a revolutionary upheaval of samurai tradition. But that misses the point. Critical theory doesn't aim for historical fidelity, it seeks disruption. Adorno's call to Amplify the Silenced isn't about what was, but what could have been, a speculative rewriting that imagines power redistributed. Yasuke then becomes a cipher for this vision, a black samurai not just as a historical quirk, but as a radical assertion that the past's hierarchies were never as fixed as they seemed. Yet this tactic isn't without tension. Japan's cultural identity, steeped in centuries of isolationism and a distinct warrior ethos, resists such reframing. Samurai were a class bound by birthright and loyalty, not a meritocracy open to outsiders. Yasuke's real story, his brief tenure under Nobunaga, ending with the world's downfall in 1582, hardly suggests a lasting challenge to that system. Elevating him risks flattening a complex history into a morality play where race and power are retrofitted onto a context that didn't frame them as such. Horkheimer's uprooting of traditional authority might resonate in a Western critique of patriarchy or colonialism, but in Japan, where feudalism crumbled under internal pressures rather than external ideology, it feels like an imported lens. Still, the appeal of this approach is undeniable. Yasuke's obscurity makes him a blank slate, a vessel for contemporary anxieties about inclusion and representation. In a globalized world where media crosses borders instantly, the impulse to diversify narratives reflects both market demands and ideological goals. Critical theory's legacy thrives here. Culture remains a battlefield, and every casting choice or plot twist is a skirmish. By centering Yasuke, creators signal a rejection of the old guard, be it Hollywood's whitewashed epics or Japan's own insular storytelling traditions. It's a move towards Adorno's utopian horizon, where the silence not only speak, but command the stage. Does this make Yasuke a triumph of critical theory or a distortion of history? Perhaps both. His story as reimagined exposes the fault lines of power. Who gets to tell history? Who gets to star in it? But it also raises questions about authenticity and intent. If every outsider is a revolutionary, do we lose sight of the systems they actually navigated? Yasuke didn't dismantle Japan's hierarchy, he survived it briefly, before fading into obscurity. The revolution Horkheimer dreamed of might not have been his fight. Yet in the hands of modern storytellers, armed with the Frankfurt School fervor, he's more than a man. He's a manifesto, a blade swung at the roots of tradition, whether it draws blood or not. I'll be honest, that approach rubs me the wrong way. History isn't a canvas to rewrite for today's agendas. It's a tapestry of real people and events, flawed but meaningful. Why not spotlight a native samurai, someone like Miyamoto Musashi, whose life embodies Japan's soul? Yasuke's inclusion feels engineered, a diversity pick meant to provoke rather than illuminate. He's not even clearly a samurai by most accounts, just a man on the edges of a bigger story. But here's where I'll pause and consider the other side. Stories don't always need to follow the expected path in order to resonate. What if Yasuke's role, handled well, could still carry weight? No pun intended. After all, some of the best tales come from unlikely places. Think of a shepherd boy toppling a giant or a fisherman leaving their nets to fish the souls of men. Maybe there is room for Yasuke to shine not as a symbol of ideology, but as a human with a unique view. First, Yasuke brings an outsider's eyes. He arrived in Japan around 1579, likely with Jesuit traders, and caught the attention of Oda Nobunaga, a warlord who reshaped the nation. Nobunaga took him in, some say as a novelty, others as a trusted aide. Whether he was a samurai or not, he was there, close to power when Nobunaga fell in 1582. That perspective could offer a fresh take, like a traveler's journal sketching a land from the margins. It's not the usual lens, but it might reveal details the insiders missed. Second, we've already had a stellar portrait of samurai honor in Ghost of Tsushima. Jin Sakai's journey captured Bushido's heart. Loyalty, sacrifice, the weight of tradition. Ubisoft might have thought, that ground's covered, how do we stand apart? Yasuke dodges the well-worn samurai epic, stepping outside Bushido's code while brushing against it. He's not bound by the same rules, yet his story intersects with Japan's warrior spirit. That could carve a distinct path, avoiding a rehashes of what's already been done so well. Third, his murky status could deepen the tale. Assassin's Creed thrives on blending fact and fiction. Think of Renaissance inventors crafting wild machines, or ancient myths coming alive. Yasuke is not a textbook samurai, and that's okay. His ambiguity invites questions. What does honor mean to a man who doesn't fully belong? How does he navigate a world so foreign to his own? That struggle, loyalty amid displacement, could echo something timeless, something human beyond any agenda. Finally, pairing him with Naoi, a Japanese shinobi, might ground the story. He's the insider, steeped in her culture's shadows, while he is the stranger, finding his footing. Together they could complement each other like a tapestry woven from different threads, stronger for its contrasts. If the game respects Japanese heritage through her and uses him to highlight an overlooked angle, it might sidestep the ideological pitfalls and build something worth experiencing. So where do I land? I still see Yasuke's casting as a calculated move, tangled in a worldview that prizes disruption over continuity. It's hard to shake the sense that he's here to check boxes, not to tell the truest story. But a good tale can rise above its origins. If Assassin's Creed Shadows leans into Yasuke's humanity, his outsider's gaze, his ties to Nobunaga, his place in the chaos, it might just work. Not because of the ideology behind it, but despite it. Stories have a way of surprising us, finding purpose in the unexpected. I'll keep an open mind and I'll give it a shot. And what about you? Let's hear your thoughts. And until next time, cheers.